The man I cheated on was my fated mate, in another life. The last thing I remember is the screech of tires. I had been yelling at him again. My boyfriend, Noah. I was angry, furious actually. I had caught myself doing something I never thought I would do. I cheated on him. I betrayed him in the worst way possible, and the guilt was suffocating me. And yet, in that moment, in the heat of our argument, I could feel my hands shaking. Not from the anger, but from the fear of losing him. But somehow, I did. I heard the sound of metal twisting, glass shattering, and then, nothing. Blackness. When I opened my eyes again, everything felt wrong. The first thing I noticed was the weight on my chest. The air felt thick, like I was drowning in it. My head throbbed, and I could taste the metallic tang of blood in my mouth. As my senses started to sharpen, the faint smell of earth and trees filled my nostrils, followed by something deeper. The scent of pine, yes, but also something more primal. I tried to sit up, but my limbs were heavy, foreign. My body felt like a stranger's, different. I reached for my head, my fingers running through long hair that wasn't mine. The color was darker, the texture thicker. Panic bubbled inside me, and I had to fight to breathe, pushing away the immediate feeling of confusion and dread. Where was I? The last thing I remembered, Noah, the fight, the accident, now felt like a lifetime ago. I struggled to recall any details, but it was like trying to grasp smoke with my bare hands. I shook my head, willing the fog from my mind to clear. And then I heard a voice. Lira? It was a low, deep voice, too deep, almost as if it was coming from the ground itself. I froze. Lira? Who was Lira? I blinked. And suddenly, I wasn't in the car. The hospital bed was gone. The sterile smell of antiseptic and the hum of machines were replaced by the sweet, earthy fragrance of the forest. The ground beneath me was soft, mossy. The sky above me was dark, but there was an almost ethereal glow to the trees, as if they were alive in ways that didn't make sense. I pushed myself up, struggling to keep my balance. My legs wobbled like they had never been used before. My clothes, what I was wearing, felt wrong. Not like something I would wear. I stumbled, my hands touching the ground for support. The voice came again, closer this time, followed by the sound of footsteps. A figure appeared in front of me, a tall silhouette with broad shoulders. As it stepped into the dim light, I saw him clearly. A man with piercing eyes, his dark hair falling messily over his forehead. His presence felt overwhelming. He didn't look like anyone I knew. And yet, there was something familiar about him. Something inside me stirred, an odd sense of recognition I couldn't explain. Lira, are you all right? He spoke with authority, but his voice was gentle, as though he was trying to comfort me. I opened my mouth to speak, but no words came. My throat was dry, my mind too clouded. I just stared at him, trying to make sense of what was happening. This wasn't right. I wasn't Lira. I wasn't anyone else. I was Talia. I was supposed to be in my world, in my life, with Noah. Not here, wherever this was. Who are you? My voice came out hoarse, weak. He frowned, taking a step forward. I'm Riven. You don't remember? The name hit me like a bolt of lightning. Riven? Why did that name sound so familiar? I didn't know him, but it felt like my soul was reacting to him in a way I couldn't understand. No, this couldn't be happening. I tried again, but my words faltered. I was no longer sure of anything. What is this place? This is our territory, Lira. Our pack. His tone shifted, and there was something serious, even urgent in his eyes now. You've been out for a while. You don't remember anything? My heart pounded in my chest. Pack? Territory? What did he mean? Noah. I thought about him. About the wreck, the argument. My stomach twisted with the painful memory of betrayal. How could I have done that to him? To someone who trusted me so completely? But this wasn't Noah, and this wasn't my world. I wasn't in my life anymore. I wasn't sure where I was, or how I got here. But I knew one thing for sure, this wasn't my body. It didn't belong to me. The name Lira still echoed in my head, and I had a sinking feeling in my chest that this wasn't a dream. This was real. And somehow I had been thrown into a world I didn't understand, with a man I didn't recognize. but felt inexplicably drawn to. And for reasons I couldn't fathom, the guilt from my human life didn't leave me. It clung to me here, in this strange new world. "Tell me what happened," I whispered, my voice barely audible. "Why am I here?" Riven's eyes softened, but his jaw tightened as if he knew more than he was letting on. But for now, the only thing I could do was wait. Wait for the truth to unravel, for the memories to return. And maybe, just maybe, for some kind of redemption. The first few hours, or maybe it was days I couldn't tell, were a blur. It was hard to focus when every moment seemed to swirl around me like I was stuck in some kind of strange dream. But if it was a dream, it was a nightmare. The man I had met, Riven, had taken me deeper into the woods. As we walked, I tried to make sense of my surroundings. The forest was dense, the trees towering like ancient sentinels guarding some forbidden realm. The air was thick with the earthy scent of moss, pine, and something else. Something wild. I could almost taste the sharpness of the wind, and the way it seemed to carry a sense of untamed power. It was unlike anything I had ever felt before. This place. It felt both familiar and completely foreign. "You'll get used to it," Riven said, his deep voice cutting through the silence. "It's not what it seems at first. But you'll learn." I looked at him, still struggling to grasp what was happening. My body, my senses, everything felt heightened. The air seemed sharper. My hearing, though not completely clear yet, felt more precise. I could hear the distant rustle of animals in the underbrush, the soft hum of the wind. The world had suddenly become far more vivid. We continued walking until the trees opened up to reveal a hidden village. A cluster of modest stone houses stood at the heart of it, surrounded by even denser woods. The architecture was simple, but there was something about the way the buildings blended into their surroundings that made me feel like this village had been here long before anything I knew existed. As we entered, I noticed the villagers, a mix of men and women, staring at me. Some looked curious, others cautious. A few women exchanged glances, whispering to one another, but the instant I locked eyes with one of them, she quickly turned away. "Who are they?" I whispered to Riven, my voice barely audible. "Pack members," he replied, his eyes scanning the people around us with an almost predatory intensity. "They'll get used to you eventually." I tried to process what he was saying, but it felt like my mind was struggling to catch up with my surroundings. Pack? Was I in a wolf pack? It didn't make sense, but at the same time, something deep inside me felt like this was the truth. "You're part of this now," Riven said, turning to face me. His eyes flickered with something unreadable, something dark. "You need to understand that. Here, we live by a different set of rules. The bond you share with me?" I felt a strange shiver run down my spine. I didn't know how to react to that. What bond? I hadn't even known Riven for more than a few hours. And yet, that pull, that inexplicable attraction I had felt earlier, was growing stronger by the minute. I swallowed hard, trying to push the emotions down. This wasn't right. I didn't belong here. I had made a mistake. I had betrayed Noah, the man who had once been everything to me. And now I was stuck in some bizarre alternate reality, in the body of a woman who wasn't me, surrounded by creatures who weren't human. But just as I was starting to process the enormity of my situation, I caught sight of him. Riven. He was standing a few feet away, talking to another member of the pack. There was something in his posture that made me uneasy. His stance was rigid, his face set in an expression that was almost too calm. His eyes flickered in my direction, and for a split second, I thought I saw a flash of something in his gaze. Something sharp and dangerous. I took a step back, instinctively wanting to retreat. But the way he locked eyes with me made it impossible to look away. He was the alpha, the leader of this pack. He commanded respect, and his presence filled the space in ways that left little room for anything else. Yet there was something about him that felt different when it came to me. His behavior was strange, almost hostile, but masked beneath layers of cool control. As if I was some kind of enigma he couldn't figure out, but also couldn't ignore. I hadn't said much to him yet, only a few words when we first met, and nothing that would warrant the strange tension I felt between us. But it was there, unmistakable. And it only seemed to grow every time he looked at me. I found myself unable to focus on anything else. The village, the people, Everything blurred into the background as I watched him. Finally, he spoke. "You're going to need to learn to control yourself here. We don't tolerate weakness." His voice was steady, but the words hit me with an unexpected force. Was he talking to me? Did he think I was weak? I opened my mouth to respond, but no words came out. The intensity of his gaze left me speechless. "Stay close," he said, his tone softening just slightly, though his eyes never left mine. "I'll show you where you'll sleep tonight." As he turned, I couldn't help but feel the heavy weight of his words, and more importantly, the weight of the connection that seemed to bind me to him. It was like the air around us crackled with some invisible force that I couldn't understand, but that made my heart race in response. I followed him, silently, unsure of what to expect, but knowing deep down that I had no choice but to stay. This was my life now, whatever it was, whatever it meant. And somewhere, beneath the layers of confusion and fear, a part of me knew that Riven held the answers I was desperate to find. But was I ready to face them? The evening air was cool, and the forest around Riven's residence hummed with the sounds of nocturnal creatures. The moon, heavy and full, bathed the world in its silvery glow, and the shadows of the trees seemed to stretch and twist like ancient spirits watching over the land. Inside Riven's residence, the atmosphere was still. The stone walls felt cold under my fingertips as I followed him through the halls. The place was grand, elegant in its simplicity, but there was an unsettling quality to it. Riven's presence lingered here, filling the space with an energy that made it hard to breathe. We passed through corridors that were adorned with tapestries, the fabric of which seemed to tell stories of wolves and their ancient bloodlines. The air smelled faintly of pine and leather, of something primal. I was beginning to understand that everything here had its own rhythm, its own rules. Riven led me to a large room, his private quarters no doubt. The moment we stepped inside, I could feel the tension shift. It wasn't just the room or the weight of his gaze, it was his presence. The way he stood, so commanding, so impenetrable, yet there was something in his eyes that betrayed a hint of curiosity, or maybe something darker, something I couldn't quite place. "Sit," he said, his voice low and steady. I hesitated for a moment, but the command in his voice was undeniable. I sat on the large, dark leather couch in the center of the room, my hands clasped tightly in my lap as I tried to calm my racing thoughts. Riven, however, stood by the window, staring out into the night. His broad shoulders were tense, his posture still but alert. I could feel his eyes on me, even though I couldn't see his face. It was as if the air itself between us was charged, full of an invisible pull that neither of us could escape. "Do you ever feel like you're being watched?" he asked, his voice almost a whisper. I glanced up at him, startled. "What do you mean?" Riven finally turned toward me, his eyes locking with mine. There was a quiet intensity there, something I hadn't seen before. His gaze was piercing, as though he was looking through me, past me. "You feel different," he said, his voice more thoughtful now. "When you're near me, my wolf reacts. It's not normal." I felt a strange twist in my chest at the mention of his wolf. I had noticed it too, the way my heart would race when he was close, how I couldn't seem to look away from him, despite every instinct telling me to keep my distance. "I don't understand," I said, my voice barely a whisper. "Why is this happening?" Riven walked toward me, each step deliberate. As he approached, the air around us thickened. It was as if the space between us became heavier, filled with something ancient and unknown. When he finally stopped in front of me, the intensity of his presence almost took my breath away. "My wolf," he began, speaking softly. "He knows you. He feels something familiar, but he doesn't understand why, and neither do I." I swallowed hard, the knot in my stomach tightening. How could this be? How could his wolf know me? I was a stranger to this world, to him. My past life, my human life. It felt like a distant memory, almost a dream. "You're not Lira, are you?" he asked, his voice laced with an almost imperceptible uncertainty. The mention of Lira's name sent a ripple of unease through me. Lira was who I had been, the woman whose body I now inhabited. But I wasn't her. I couldn't be. I was Talia. I don't know," I whispered, my voice trembling. "I'm not who you think I am." Riven's gaze softened for a moment, though the intensity of his presence never wavered. "Then why does it feel like you are?" he muttered, almost to himself. His words were like a knife twisting in my chest. The connection, the pull between us, it was undeniable. But I couldn't understand it. I couldn't explain it. I don't know why I feel this way, I said, my voice barely a breath. But it's like something is pulling me toward you. I don't know why. He studied me for a long moment, his eyes narrowing slightly, as though he were trying to piece together a puzzle that had no answer. My wolf doesn't lie, he finally said, his voice heavy with meaning. And neither do I. A shiver ran down my spine. There was something in his words, something so sure, so absolute, that I couldn't deny it. I had been drawn to him instinctively, without understanding why. And now, sitting here, I could feel the weight of that connection, pressing against my chest like a heavy stone. I need to understand this, he said, stepping closer. You're different. I don't know why you're here or what your role is in all of this, but I won't rest until I figure it out. His words hung in the air between us, thick with the promise of something that neither of us fully understood. And as much as I wanted to run, to escape the pull that tied me to him, I knew, deep down, that it wasn't that simple. I don't know what I'm supposed to be, I whispered. But I promise you, I won't hurt you. I don't want to. Riven's eyes softened, just a fraction. You won't, but I need you to be honest with me. This, whatever this is between us, it's not just something we can ignore. Not anymore. I nodded, swallowing hard. I had no answers. But for the first time since I had woken up in this strange world, I felt like I might be able to find them. And maybe, just maybe, Riven was the key. The forest was quiet, save for the occasional rustle of leaves and the distant call of a bird. The sun filtered through the trees, casting dappled light on the forest floor. The air was cool and crisp, and with every step I took, I felt my senses sharpen, the weight of this new world pressing against me. I didn't belong here. Not in this body, not in this life. But as I walked, trying to clear my mind, my past began to creep in, like a shadow at the edge of my thoughts. I had been with Noah. I had loved him. Truly, I had. At least, I thought I had. But that didn't change the fact that I had betrayed him. I had cheated on him, and I knew in my heart that it was the one mistake I couldn't take back. It didn't matter that I regretted it. It didn't matter that I had begged for forgiveness, or that I had tried to make it right. The damage had been done. And now, in this strange new world, that guilt hung over me like a dark cloud. I hadn't told Riven everything yet. I couldn't. The guilt was suffocating, and I wasn't sure how to reconcile the woman I used to be with the woman I was now. I stopped at the edge of a small clearing, the sight of a serene lake before me almost pulling the breath from my lungs. The water was still, reflecting the sky like a mirror. The peacefulness of the scene contrasted sharply with the storm of emotions inside me. A part of me wanted to stay here, to lose myself in the quiet and the stillness, but another part of me felt that I needed to confront what I was running from. I stepped closer to the water, the grass cool beneath my feet. My mind wandered back to that last night with Noah. The argument. The harsh words that I couldn't take back. I had been angry, frustrated. I had let my insecurities get the best of me, and in that moment of weakness, I made the worst choice of my life. And now, Noah was gone, and I was here, trapped in this strange body, in a world I didn't understand. I closed my eyes and let out a long breath, trying to push the memories away. But they lingered, sharp and raw. The sound of footsteps behind me made me freeze. I knew who it was before I even turned around. I could feel his presence, the weight of it in the air. Riven. Even without seeing him, I could sense him, his energy drawing me in like a magnet. I hadn't been able to escape him, not even in the solitude of the forest. But I wasn't ready for him. Not yet. I turned quickly, trying to mask the emotions that were threatening to spill over. I wasn't sure how much of me he could see, but I didn't want him to see the weakness in my eyes, the fear that was creeping up on me. I didn't mean to intrude, Riven said, his voice low but still carrying through the silence. His eyes were soft, but there was an intensity to them that I couldn't ignore. I just wanted to make sure you were all right. I nodded, trying to compose myself. I'm fine, I lied, forcing a smile that I knew didn't reach my eyes. He took a step closer, his gaze flickering toward the water, then back to me. This place? It's where we come to clear our minds, to think. You're not the only one who's been through a lot." His words were simple, but there was an understanding in them. A knowing. I swallowed hard, fighting the urge to break down in front of him. How could I? I couldn't let him see me like this. Not after everything. "You don't have to be alone," Riven continued, his voice softer now. "You don't have to hide." But I did. I needed to hide. I needed to hide from him, from the feelings that were growing between us, from the past that I couldn't escape. I couldn't let him get too close, not until I figured out what was happening to me. I turned my gaze back to the lake, the ripples in the water reflecting the turmoil inside me. The past seemed so far away, and yet, it felt like it was right here, pressing down on me. I couldn't outrun it. Not when my heart kept telling me that what I was feeling for Riven was more than just a connection. It was deeper. It was as if my soul knew him, even if my mind didn't. "Riven, I started, but the words caught in my throat. I didn't know how to explain what I was feeling, not when I didn't even fully understand it myself. "You don't have to say anything," he said, his voice gentle but firm. "But when you're ready to talk, I'll be here." I could feel his eyes on me, and for a brief moment, I felt like maybe I wasn't completely alone, but that comfort was short-lived as the reality of my situation came crashing back. I had betrayed the man I loved. And now, in this new life, I didn't know how to make it right. "I need to be alone for a while," I whispered, barely able to meet his gaze. Riven didn't say anything at first. He simply nodded, his expression unreadable. "I'll be nearby," he said quietly, before turning and disappearing into the trees. As I stood there, staring at the lake, I felt the weight of everything I had lost, and everything I was still afraid to lose. The connection between Riven and me was undeniable, but it was too much. I wasn't ready for it. Not yet. I couldn't escape my past, and I wasn't sure how to face it. But I knew one thing for certain: the path forward would be far more complicated than I had ever imagined. And no matter how much I tried to avoid it, Riven was a part of that path. The days blurred together as I slowly tried to settle into this new life. Despite my efforts to understand this world, it never quite felt like my own. The people here, the pack, treated me with a mixture of curiosity and caution. I had not yet earned their trust, nor had I fully embraced my role. But I was learning quickly that the pack didn't leave room for uncertainty. Riven had made it clear, I was expected to contribute. The pack was a community, and they didn't operate on sympathy or inclusion, they operated on strength, loyalty, and usefulness. I was neither strong nor loyal in their eyes. Not yet. The residence of the pack, where Riven lived and where I was now staying, was much more than just a home. It was a fortress. A place where leaders and warriors trained, where decisions were made. The walls were thick, made of stone that seemed to hum with an ancient energy. Everything about the place spoke of power and history. But to me, it felt suffocating, as though every inch of it was a reminder that I didn't belong here. My days were filled with tests, physical ones, mental ones, emotional ones. They weren't all designed to break me, but it felt like they were. I was pushed to my limits, expected to do things I hadn't even imagined. At first, I stumbled. The tasks were foreign to me: preparing meals, training in basic defense, learning the traditions of the pack. They made me feel like a stranger in my own body. But slowly, I began to understand. This wasn't just about fitting in. It was about survival. I had no choice but to follow their ways if I wanted to stay in this world. If I wanted to make sense of my place in it. But there was one thing that was becoming more and more clear: Riven was always watching. He never spoke much to me directly during these tests, but his presence was constant. He was there, standing off to the side, watching my every move, his eyes like lasers, scanning for weakness. I couldn't help but feel his gaze on me at all times, and it made my pulse quicken despite the intensity of my focus on the tasks at hand. At times, his look was one of disapproval. Other times, it was hard to read, but there was always something about it, a quiet, almost predatory awareness that made my skin prickle. I wasn't sure if he was judging me or just waiting. One evening, I found myself alone in the courtyard, cleaning up after one of the training sessions. My hands were raw from the constant work, and the sun was setting in the distance, casting long shadows over the stone pathway. The evening air was cold, and a chill ran through me as I pushed the mop across the floor. I could hear the pack members laughing in the distance, voices filled with camaraderie, and the ease that came from belonging to something greater. But all I could think about was my failure to fit in. My mistakes. Is this how you imagined it? Riven's voice startled me, cutting through the silence. I turned quickly, startled to see him standing a few feet away, watching me with those intense, piercing eyes. His posture was relaxed, but there was an underlying tension, as though he was always ready to pounce. I didn't imagine anything, I said softly, trying to push away the lump in my throat. I didn't know what to expect. He took a few steps closer, his gaze never leaving mine. You were given a place here. You should be more than just an outsider, Talia. The way he said my name made my heart skip a beat. It was both an acknowledgement and a reminder of my failure, of my place in this world. I was still nothing to the pack. I wasn't like them. I didn't know their ways, and I didn't feel their strength. But I could feel the weight of his words, and that weight was starting to shape me into someone I didn't recognize. I'm trying, I said, the frustration creeping into my voice. But it's not easy. I don't know what I'm supposed to do here. Riven studied me for a long moment before his expression softened, just slightly. You need to accept what you are now. Your place in this world isn't something you can deny. You have abilities that the others don't. You've always had them. And I'm sure the pack will notice it soon enough. They're waiting for you to prove yourself. His words felt like both a warning and a promise. I had abilities? I wasn't sure what he meant by that. But there was something in his voice, something almost like respect, that made me feel both unsettled and intrigued. I had been trying to find a way to fit in, but what if fitting in wasn't the point? What if my place here wasn't about following the same path as everyone else? What do you mean? I asked, my voice trembling slightly. What abilities? I don't have any powers. I'm not like you. Riven's eyes narrowed slightly, and he took another step toward me. That's where you're wrong. You are like us, Talia. You just don't know it yet, but you will. The air between us thickened, and for a moment, I thought he might say more. But instead, he turned and began to walk away, leaving me standing there, my heart racing, my mind in turmoil. The pack had expectations, and as much as I fought against it, I knew now that I had a role to play, whether I liked it or not, and somehow, I felt the pressure to prove myself was growing stronger by the minute. The pack was watching, and Riven was waiting. But I couldn't shake the feeling that no matter how much I tried to push it away, I was already becoming a part of something I had no control over, something I might not be able to escape. The training arena was loud, filled with the sounds of bodies colliding, grunts of effort, and the sharp staccato rhythm of feet pounding against the stone floor. I stood at the edge of it, watching as the pack members sparred. Their movements were fluid, precise, the way wolves moved, swift and deadly. There was no hesitation, no second-guessing. Just instinct, just strength. I had never felt so out of place in my life. The people here, the pack, were everything I wasn't. They were confident, capable, and at ease in their world. I was still trying to figure out how to stand without feeling like I was stumbling, how to breathe without the weight of guilt pressing down on my chest. But I wasn't just struggling with fitting in. Something else was pulling at me. Something more complicated. Riven. Every time I saw him, it felt like my heart was being yanked out of my chest. The pull between us, the strange connection that seemed to tighten with every passing day, it was becoming harder to ignore. It wasn't just his presence that affected me. It was the way my soul seemed to recognize him, even if my mind didn't understand why. I shifted my gaze toward him, watching as he moved through the arena with the ease of someone who had been born into this life. His movements were effortless, controlled, like everything in his body was tuned to the rhythm of the pack, to the rhythm of the world he inhabited. But, despite his outward calm, I could see the tension in his jaw, the way his eyes occasionally flicked toward me. Was he feeling it too? The connection between us, this bond that neither of us had asked for, was becoming unbearable. Every time he looked at me, it was as if my skin burned, and every time our eyes met, the world seemed to narrow down to just the two of us. I hated it. I didn't know how to handle it. I didn't want to feel this way, not after everything that had happened. I didn't want to let myself fall for him, especially when I had no idea what my place was in this world. I wasn't even sure I could trust myself anymore. Do you think you're ready for this? His voice cut through the noise, pulling me from my thoughts. I turned and found Riven standing just behind me, his presence overwhelming as always. His eyes were intense, watching me with that unreadable expression. The training, the responsibility. I swallowed hard, trying to force the emotions bubbling inside me down. "I'm trying," I said, my voice steady. But the knot in my stomach betrayed me. Riven studied me for a moment, his expression shifting just slightly. "Trying isn't enough," he said, his tone firm. "Not here. Not for the pack. They expect more from you." His gaze lingered on me, and I could feel the weight of his scrutiny pressing down on me. "You have more inside you. You need to learn to trust it, and trust me." His words sent a shiver down my spine. Trust him? How could I trust him when I didn't even fully understand myself? "I don't know if I can," I whispered, almost to myself. Riven took a step closer, his gaze never leaving mine. There was something different in his eyes now, something softer, less guarded. For the first time, I saw the flicker of vulnerability there. A crack in the walls he'd built around himself. "You're not alone in this," he said, his voice low and steady. "I'll help you. You don't have to do it on your own." The words were simple, but they carried weight. And in that moment, I realized that it wasn't just my own fears and uncertainties that were holding me back. It was him. Riven. My feelings for him. The bond between us was growing stronger with every passing day, and I couldn't escape it. I turned away, looking out at the sparring match again, trying to focus on anything other than him. I needed space. I needed distance from this pull between us. But Riven wasn't letting me retreat this time. He took a step closer, his voice softer now. "Talia, look at me." I hesitated but eventually met his gaze. His eyes were intense, filled with a depth I hadn't seen before. There was a quiet understanding in them, as though he knew exactly what I was feeling. "You don't have to be afraid," he said, his voice barely a whisper. "I won't hurt you." I can't stay away from you, Talia." My breath caught in my throat at his words. I hadn't expected him to say that, not in a million years. I could feel the heat rise in my cheeks, my pulse quickening. His words, the weight of them, settled over me like a blanket, heavy with meaning. I opened my mouth to respond, but no words came. Instead, I stood there, frozen, caught between what I felt and what I feared. Riven stepped closer, his body just inches from mine. I could feel the heat radiating from him, the tension in the air thick and almost suffocating. His eyes dropped to my lips, and I couldn't help but notice the slight hitch in his breath. "I'll protect you," he whispered, his voice rougher than usual. "Whatever happens, I won't let anything happen to you." I felt his words like a promise, but it was one that tied me down even more. I wanted to trust him. I wanted to believe that he could protect me from everything, from my past, from the fear that was gnawing at me, from the emotions I couldn't control. But there was still so much I didn't understand. Riven's hand reached out, gently brushing against my cheek, and for a moment, the world seemed to disappear. It was just him and me, and the pull between us. But I pulled back, breaking the connection. "I can't," I whispered, shaking my head, my voice trembling. "I'm not ready for this." Riven's eyes darkened, but there was no anger there, only a quiet acceptance. "When you are," he said softly, "I'll be here." And with that, he turned and walked away, leaving me standing there, my heart racing, my mind spinning. The bond between us was undeniable, but whether I was ready to embrace it or not, that was another story. And for now, I wasn't sure I ever would be. The forest was still that evening. A hush had fallen over the trees, as if the world itself was holding its breath. The moon hung low in the sky, casting long shadows over the earth. I couldn't escape the feeling that I was about to step into something I couldn't undo, something that would change everything. Riven had been quiet with me all day, his usual intensity heightened by a strange distance. It was like he was pulling away, but not in the way I had hoped. I had to talk to him. I couldn't keep running from it anymore. The weight of the truth was too heavy, pressing down on me, suffocating me. I walked deeper into the forest, trying to steady my breathing. My heart pounded in my chest, a constant reminder of the fear I couldn't shake. The betrayal, the lies. I had to tell him. I had to confess what I had done in my human life, no matter how much it terrified me. I found the clearing, the place where I had first seen Riven, the place where our connection had sparked. The quiet beauty of the area made my stomach churn. It was too serene, too peaceful for the storm I was about to unleash. I waited. And then I heard it. His footsteps. Heavy. Purposeful. As he entered the clearing, his dark eyes locked onto mine. There was a flicker of something in his gaze, something I couldn't decipher. But whatever it was familiar. And that made everything more difficult. He stopped a few feet away, his posture tense, watching me closely. He was waiting for me to speak. "Riven," I began, my voice trembling despite myself. "I need to tell you something." He nodded but didn't say anything, his eyes still fixed on me. The silence between us grew thick with tension. I'm not who you think I am," I said, the words coming out in a rush. I've been hiding something that I've been running from." Riven tilted his head slightly, his expression unreadable, but I could feel the weight of his attention on me. "What is it, Talia?" he asked, his voice low but steady. I drew in a shaky breath. "In my past life, I was with someone I loved. But I betrayed him," I said, each word cutting through me like a knife. "I cheated on him, I hurt him, and I can't forgive myself for it. That's who I was." The confession hung in the air between us, heavy and thick, suffocating. My throat tightened, and I struggled to hold back the tears that threatened to spill. Riven's eyes hardened at my words, and I watched the muscles in his jaw tense. He took a step back, his expression flickering with shock. For a moment, I thought I saw anger in his eyes, but it was gone as quickly as it came. "You," he began, his voice cracking slightly. "You betrayed him?" I nodded, my stomach twisting with the weight of the truth. "I didn't deserve him. I don't deserve anyone." The words fell out of my mouth before I could stop them, and I felt the full force of my guilt rush back, threatening to drown me. Riven's gaze sharpened, his lips pressed into a thin line. "And now, you're telling me this, why?" he asked, his voice colder than I'd ever heard it before. I thought you should know the truth," I said, barely above a whisper. "I thought you should know who I really am. I didn't want to hide it from you anymore." Riven turned away, walking a few steps into the clearing, his fists clenched tightly at his sides. He stood there for a long moment, his back to me, as if trying to make sense of what I had said. "I didn't ask for this," he said finally, his voice strained. "I didn't ask for your past. I didn't ask for this bond between us." I winced at the words. The bond? The connection that had only grown stronger despite everything I'd tried to avoid. "But it doesn't matter now, does it?" he continued, turning back to face me, his expression cold. "You've made your choices, Talia. You've already hurt someone. Why should I trust you?" I flinched, the sting of his words cutting through me like a blade. I had hurt him. I had betrayed him before I even knew him. Riven's eyes softened slightly as he took a step forward, but there was something unreadable in his gaze. "You think I don't know what it's like to make mistakes?" he asked, his voice quieter now. "You think I haven't hurt people too?" I opened my mouth to speak, but he held up his hand, silencing me. "I've seen betrayal before," he said, his voice steady but filled with emotion. "I know what it does. But what I don't understand is why you're here, why you feel this pull between us. It doesn't make sense." I took a shaky step toward him, feeling the weight of the confession press down on me. "I don't understand it either. But I can't ignore it. I can't ignore you." Riven's expression softened for a moment, and he sighed heavily. "I'm trying, Talia," he said, his voice quiet but filled with a raw honesty I hadn't expected. "But it's not easy. Not after everything you've told me." "I know," I whispered, my voice barely audible. "But please, don't push me away. I'm not asking you to forgive me, not yet. But I need to be here. I need to figure this out." Riven stood there for a long moment, his gaze locked on mine. His wolf, his instincts, were at war with his mind. I could see it in the way his jaw clenched, the way his eyes flickered with emotions he didn't want to show. Finally he spoke, his voice low and filled with a mix of frustration and something deeper. "I can't promise you anything, not yet. But I'll try, for now." The words hit me harder than I expected, and a strange sense of relief washed over me. It wasn't forgiveness. It wasn't even understanding, but it was a crack in the wall that had grown between us. and it was enough to keep me from feeling completely lost. As he turned away, I realized that the path forward wouldn't be easy. But maybe, just maybe, I had a chance to make things right. And with Riven at my side, however uncertain the future was, I was willing to try. The forest was dense, its shadows stretching far and wide as if it were an endless labyrinth, waiting to test those who dared to navigate its depths. I stood at the edge of the clearing, feeling the weight of the silence surrounding me. The air was thick, heavy with the scent of pine and earth, but underneath that familiar smell, there was something else, something that reminded me of the challenges ahead. I had made my choice. The words I had said to Riven, the confession of my past, were just the beginning. Now I had to prove that I was more than the woman who had betrayed him, more than the mistakes of my previous life. I had to prove that I could be something of value here, something worthy of the trust I so desperately sought. The pack was watching me. Every step, every breath, every decision I made, it was under their scrutiny. And more than anyone else, Riven was watching. He hadn't said much since our conversation in the clearing, but I could feel his presence behind me, a constant reminder that my every move mattered. His trust, or lack of it, would shape my future here. And it wasn't just about him, this was about the pack, about earning my place in this world. I had already failed once, and I wouldn't allow myself to fail again. The first test was a trial of endurance, nothing too fancy, just a simple run through the forest. The challenge was clear: navigate the terrain without faltering, without hesitation. The pack members had completed it before, their bodies moving with the grace and power of wolves, as though they were born to run through this wild world. But for me, it wasn't simple. Every step felt clumsy, every branch I tripped over a reminder of how far I had to go. My lungs burned with the effort, and my legs ached with the strain. But I couldn't stop. I couldn't give in to the urge to collapse. I pushed forward, my breath coming in ragged gasps. My thoughts kept drifting to the same thing: Riven. I could feel his eyes on me, and it drove me harder. I was running for more than just my survival. I was running to prove that I could do this, that I could be more than just a failure. As I neared the end of the course, my vision blurred with exhaustion, but I forced my feet to keep moving. I could hear the sounds of the pack members murmuring in the distance, their voices rising in a mixture of surprise and curiosity. I wasn't sure if they were impressed, but that didn't matter. The finish line was just ahead, and I wasn't going to stop until I crossed it. When I finally crossed the line, I collapsed to the ground, my chest heaving, my body trembling with exhaustion. The pack gathered around, some offering brief nods of acknowledgement, others looking at me with indifferent eyes. But Riven stood at the edge of the crowd, his gaze fixed on me. I couldn't read his expression, but I knew he had been watching every moment. "You're not done yet," Riven's voice rang out, his tone steady. But there was something else in his words, something that made my heart race. I looked up at him, still gasping for breath. "What do you mean?" "Next test," he said, his voice unwavering. He nodded toward the dense woods behind me. "Survive the night." My stomach dropped. "What?" "You'll be alone, in the woods, no food, no help. You have until morning to find your way back." I could feel the weight of his words pressing down on me. The woods were vast, and the night was cold. There were predators, dangerous animals, and worst of all, my own fear. "You're testing me," I said, trying to steady my breathing. "I'm testing you," he confirmed. "The pack needs to see that you can handle what's to come, that you can survive." I nodded, my mind already racing through the possibilities. I couldn't afford to fail. This wasn't just about me, it was about proving that I could be part of something bigger, that I could belong. I stood, wiping the sweat from my brow, and took a step toward the trees. Every step felt heavier than the last, but I didn't look back. I had to do this. The night was colder than I had expected. The forest, alive with the sounds of animals stirring, felt like a labyrinth. Each shadow seemed to shift, and every rustle in the underbrush made my heart race. I had no idea what I would face out there, but I knew this was my chance. My chance to prove myself. I spent the night navigating the wilderness, feeling the weight of every branch I broke, every wrong turn I made. My body ached with the effort, but my mind was focused. I couldn't let myself be consumed by fear. I had to stay calm. I had to stay strong. As dawn broke, the first light of day spilling through the trees, I finally made my way back to the clearing. My legs were shaking, my clothes torn from the rough terrain. But I was alive. I had made it. When I stepped back into the camp, Riven was waiting, his eyes scanning me with an intensity that made my heart race. He didn't say anything at first, just looked at me, his gaze calculating, as if he were weighing something in his mind. "You survived," he said, his voice steady. I nodded, unable to find the words. My chest was tight with exhaustion, and yet there was something else, a strange sense of pride. I had done it. I had faced the forest, and I had survived. Riven stepped closer, his gaze never leaving mine. "You did well," he said, his voice softer now. "But this is only the beginning, Talia." His words were both a challenge and a promise. There was still so much more to prove, so much more to do. But for the first time, I felt like I was on the right path. "I'll prove myself," I said, my voice steady, despite the exhaustion that clung to me. Riven looked at me for a long moment, his eyes softening just a fraction. "You're on your way," he said quietly, before turning to walk away. I stood there for a moment, letting his words settle in my mind. I had taken the first step toward redemption, and no matter how hard the road ahead would be, I knew now that I was ready to walk it. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was beginning to thrive, and with Riven by my side, maybe, just maybe, I could rebuild what I had broken. The early morning light broke through the trees, casting a warm glow over the camp as the forest began to wake. The sounds of birds calling to each other, the rustling of leaves in the gentle breeze. Everything felt so alive, so full of possibility. It was hard to believe how much had changed in such a short time. The past few days had been a blur of trials and revelations. But now, as I stood in the quiet of the camp, I felt a shift within me. A change I hadn't anticipated. I had spent so much of my time here trying to prove myself, trying to redeem my past, but now I was beginning to realize that I didn't need to prove anything. Not to Riven, not to the pack, and not to myself. I had come to this world full of fear and guilt, weighed down by the betrayal I had committed. But with every trial, every challenge, I had discovered something new about myself, something I had buried for so long. Strength, hope, and even, surprisingly, love. I walked toward the clearing, where Riven's house stood. It wasn't much, but it was his, a reflection of him, strong and solid, yet humble. The pack had always been his world, but now it felt like he was starting to build something with me. Something that went beyond duty, beyond survival. Something that had begun to take root between us in a way that neither of us had expected. Riven stood outside, his broad form silhouetted against the rising sun. He was watching the horizon, his expression distant. But when he turned to face me, there was a softness in his eyes that hadn't been there before. "You're up early," I said, my voice soft as I approached him. He smiled faintly, the warmth of it reaching his eyes. "Couldn't sleep. Too much on my mind." I stepped closer, the cool morning air filling my lungs as I tried to steady my racing heart. "I think we both have a lot on our minds." He nodded, his gaze never leaving mine. "We do. But I think it's time to stop looking back." I felt a lump rise in my throat at his words. They were what I needed to hear. I had been afraid that the past, my mistakes, would always hang over us like a shadow. But now in this moment standing here with him, I realized that we didn't have to carry that weight anymore. "You're right," I whispered. "I've spent so long running from my past. But I can't keep doing that. Not anymore." Riven stepped closer, his presence overwhelming in the best way. "We can't change what happened, Talia. But we can decide what we do now." I nodded, feeling the truth of his words sink deep into my bones. I had spent so much time blaming myself for my past actions. But the only thing I could do now was move forward. With him. With the pack. With the future we were beginning to build together. "We can build something new," I said, my voice steady now. "Something real. Something that isn't defined by what we've done, but by what we choose to do." Riven's hand reached out, brushing gently against my cheek. It was a small gesture, but it carried so much meaning. "I've been watching you, Talia. I've seen the way you've changed, the way you've faced everything head on. And I think we can do this." I closed my eyes at his touch, feeling the weight of his words wrap around me like a comforting blanket. For the first time since I had arrived in this world, I felt like I had found my place. Not just in the pack, Not just in Riven's life, but in my own. I've been scared, I confessed, my voice barely a whisper. I've been scared of what this could be. Of what I could be. You're stronger than you think, he said softly, his thumb brushing over my skin. You've already proven that. I opened my eyes and met his gaze, finding something there that made my heart swell with hope. There was no more fear. There was no more guilt. There was only us, here now, with a future ahead of us. I'm ready, I said. The words feeling like a promise, a vow. I'm ready to be here, to be with you. Riven smiled, and this time it was full of warmth. He pulled me gently toward him, his arms wrapping around me in a protective embrace. I could feel the steady rhythm of his heartbeat against mine. A reminder that we were in this together. We'll take it one day at a time, he murmured against my hair. Together. And for the first time, I truly believed that. There was no more running, no more hiding. The past was a part of me, but it didn't define me. What defined me now was the woman standing here, in this moment, ready to face whatever came next, and the man holding me, showing me that even after all the pain, all the mistakes, there was still a chance for something beautiful. We stood there for a long moment, wrapped in the quiet comfort of each other's presence, knowing that this was the beginning of something new. Something we could build together. A future filled with redemption, love, and the strength to overcome anything that came our way. And in that silence, I knew this was just the start of our story. The night was darker than usual, as if the heavens themselves were holding their breath. The wind had picked up, howling through the trees like a warning. I stood at the edge of the camp, looking out into the forest, my heart pounding in my chest. The peace we had built, the quiet understanding between Riven and me, was about to be tested, and I wasn't sure if we were ready for what was coming. Riven was beside me, his body tense, his eyes scanning the horizon. I could feel the weight of his gaze on me, but it wasn't the usual intensity. There was something different now, something that made me feel both anchored and vulnerable. We had come so far, and now, it felt like everything was about to change. We've trained for this, Riven said, his voice low and steady. We've faced every challenge together. This isn't any different. But it was different. This wasn't just a trial to prove myself, or to earn the pack's trust. This was real. This was about survival, about protecting everything we had built together. A rustling sound cut through the stillness, and I felt it before I saw it. The air grew thick with tension, as though the forest itself was preparing for the storm that was about to hit. They're here, Riven muttered, his hand gripping the hilt of his blade. His body shifted slightly, his muscles coiling with readiness. Stay close. I nodded, feeling the surge of adrenaline course through my veins. The pack had trained us for moments like this, but this was different. The enemy wasn't just another rival pack. It was something darker, something more dangerous. They were out there, lurking in the shadows, waiting for the right moment to strike. The ground trembled slightly, the sound of heavy footsteps drawing closer. I swallowed the lump in my throat and stepped closer to Riven, our shoulders brushing as if to remind ourselves that we were in this together, that we would face this challenge as a team. Remember, Riven said, his voice barely above a whisper. Trust your instincts. Trust me. It wasn't just his words that gave me strength. It was the way he said them, as if he truly believed in me. As if he truly believed in us. And for the first time, I believed in myself too. I wasn't the woman who had failed before. I wasn't the woman burdened by guilt and mistakes. I was stronger now. We both were. The first of the enemies emerged from the trees, cloaked in shadows. Their figures were tall and menacing, their eyes glowing with an unnatural hunger. My breath caught in my throat as I recognized them. They weren't just any creatures, they were the same beasts we had been warned about. Dark, twisted wolves, corrupted by power and hunger. They weren't part of the natural order. They were the ones who threatened everything. There's more of them, I whispered, my voice trembling as I saw their numbers grow. Riven's jaw tightened, and he nodded. We fight now. Together. The moment his words ended, the enemy lunged, their movements swift and brutal. The air was filled with the sound of steel meeting claws, of growls and snarls echoing through the night. I drew my weapon, my hands shaking slightly as I gripped the hilt. I wasn't sure how I would handle this, but I couldn't hesitate. Not now. Riven was at my side instantly, his blade flashing as he cut through the first of the attackers. I moved with him, the rhythm of our fight becoming instinctual, as if we were in perfect sync. My body moved without thought, responding to the danger, to the rhythm of battle. Every strike, every dodge, every moment felt like it was part of something greater. This wasn't just about survival anymore. This was about us proving that we could do this together, that we could protect what we had built. A dark shape darted toward me, and I barely had time to react before it was upon me. The creature's claws slashed through the air, and I felt a rush of cold panic. But just as the creature lunged for my throat, Riven was there, his blade cutting through the air with deadly precision. The beast crumpled to the ground, its dark eyes empty. "Are you all right?" Riven asked, his voice sharp, but filled with concern. "I'm fine," I said, my breath ragged. I had to focus. I had to stay sharp. "Let's finish this." We fought side by side, our movements fluid, each of us covering the other's back. The pack was fighting too, but it was clear that we were the ones who had to end this. We were the ones who had to show the strength of our bond. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the last of the beasts fell to the ground, their bodies still. The silence that followed was deafening, but I didn't feel relief just yet. I felt the weight of the battle. The cost. We had won, but at what cost? Riven turned to me, his eyes filled with something I couldn't quite place. But it wasn't just relief. It was something deeper. "You did well," he said, his voice soft but steady. "We did it. Together?" I nodded, still catching my breath, my body aching from the fight. But there was something else in me now, something that had shifted, something that had solidified between us. We had proven our strength, not just as individuals, but as a team, as a pair. "We did," I said quietly. "Together." Riven stepped closer, his hand reaching out to gently touch my cheek, a gesture that felt both comforting and powerful. The fight was over, but in this moment, it felt like the beginning of something new. "You've earned your place," he said, his voice filled with quiet pride. And not just in the pack, in my life. I felt a surge of emotion welling up inside me, but I couldn't find the words. Instead, I simply reached for him, closing the space between us as I leaned into his embrace. This wasn't just about the battle we had won. It was about what we had fought for. Our future. Our bond. Our chance at redemption. Together, we had proven that nothing could break us. And nothing ever would. We stood there, in the quiet aftermath, knowing that the road ahead was still long. But for the first time, I wasn't afraid. We had each other. And together we could face whatever came next.